Well, it's that time of year again. It's early to mid-spring, and this is the time of year that I really love to be outside for one particular reason, and that is foraging. There's so much new life coming up, whether it's roots, shoots, leaves, buds, and even some berries. This is the perfect time of year to get a lot of succulent life from the ground, whether it be leeks, trout lily, burdock root, basswood leaves. There's a lot of things out here to eat right now. And as you can tell, I like to eat. So, the beautiful thing about this time of year is everything's coming up fresh and succulent. It's not going to be woody, it's not going to be dried up like it will be in the fall or even in late summer. We're dealing with the perfect time of year to get a lot of really new growth that's nice and tasty, very tender, doesn't have a lot of bitter flavor to it yet. This is the perfect time. Now, of course, we're a little late for some of these plants. For instance, fiddleheads just finished leafing out just a few days ago. We don't really want to eat them now. This is about a week ago, prime time. A good friend of mine filled an entire basket within one afternoon and didn't even put a dent in the fiddlehead population around him. But what we have going on right now is leeks, trout lily, all those things that are still growing and still coming to their prime. And this is the perfect time of year to get those. We're not going to get things like birch sap and maple sap because it's a little later, but there's still a lot of great things to eat out here, and hopefully out of this day we'll be able to make ourselves a pretty nice dinner. So stay tuned and join us. There's some simple items you want to carry with you to help in your foraging process. The first thing is something to carry the foods that you gather easily. I don't recommend carrying bags because they can bruise greens, they can mash up berries, and they get really disgusting after a while, especially plastic bags. If you're going to use a bag, use a cloth bag because it breathes and it's not going to hold in condensation. What I prefer to carry is a basket. Now, baskets can be everything from small ones to large ones, and it really comes down to what you need it for and how much you're gathering that day. The best option is to carry a basket for the size of what you're gathering, and they're great because they're rigid, they're not going to mash up the food inside, they protect it from outside, air can get in there and keep everything nice and fresh. It's not going to wilt as badly as if it does inside a bag. What I have is a pack basket made by my friend Nick Dillingham from Black Thunder Studio. This is a black ash splint basket that he hand wove himself. This is a fantastic, amazing basket that I absolutely adore. And I bring this out specifically because I'm planning on harvesting bulk amount of food. I'm trying to feed my household with what I gather out here. I'm not just going to bring out a little strawberry basket. I'm going to bring out as much food as I can from the job of the day. You can carry smaller baskets by all means. They're perfect for what you need to use. It all comes down to what you're planning on harvesting that day and how much you plan on taking. Beyond carrying implements, there are other things you need to carry. If you're digging for roots, there's really only a few options available. The most straightforward is a shovel. This one is a big old spade, long handle, and that gives you a lot of leverage, and it gives you a nice sharp blade to be able to dig into the ground and pull up a lot of material at once. The downside to using a steel bladed shovel, or really any shovel of any kind, is it can actually cut what you're trying to dig up. It can damage what you're trying to dig up, and you can disturb a lot more soil than what you intended to. If I'm trying to gather invasive species, such as yellow rocket, garlic mustard, I don't want to disturb the soil and give them even better advantage for when they reseed and take over that area even stronger. Smaller hole means less damage to the environment and less chance for more invasive species. What I really like to use is a digging stick. This one's been with me for about 3 or 4 years, and it's made out of white ash, and it's been shaped completely in the Stone Age style, using a stone axe to cut it from the tree and of course crown it, and then using fire to shape it and rocks to grind it. It has a nice long taper, not a big chisel grind, and it's just narrow enough that when I plunge it into the ground and drive, it's just going to make a small hole for where I pull out the root. This one's nice and flexible, which is what I love about white ash, is it can take a lot of abuse with the prying process, because you are going to pry with this tool to get the roots out of the ground. And it's light. Compared to this shovel, it's a fraction of the weight. So when I'm walking through the woods, I'd rather carry something light. If you don't want to go the way of a digging stick, you can always carry a trowel or a small spade. Keep it in your basket or keep it in your back pocket. that does work as well. The final thing that you really need to focus on for tools out here is a knife. Now, most times we like to recommend a bush knife like this, which is a high carbon steel blade, large blade, sturdy, fixed handle. But in my opinion, high carbon steel blades can be a detriment. The biggest issue with them is the fact that, well, high carbon steel can react to certain plants, especially roots and tubers. When you cut them, the high carbon steel can actually oxidize the root faster, which means that part's not going to be as tasty later. You may not want to eat it. It may leave a bad flavor. What I have instead is my little foraging knife. This is an open L. This one's made out of, actually this one's made out of stainless steel, which is what I prefer for cutting up roots and vegetables. This one I got from my friend Dave Ross from Branded Hair and Leatherworks. He carries them in his amazing supply of product lines. And unlike a belt knife, it's discreet, fits in the pocket, and it's not going to be, well, if you bump into people out here, they're not going to think you're some sort of Rambo out here trying to, live off the land like a crazy guy. You're going to be living on the land like a sophisticated person. So those are the main tools you're going to want to have with you. A knife of some sort, preferably stainless steel, a basket, and a digging implement of whatever style you prefer. That's really all you need to get started, other than having a proper mindset and knowing what you're looking for and being able to study the nuances of the plant life out here, which is what we're going to get into next. Now, there's a lot of books you can get regarding wild food. The first thing that I recommend is getting a proper field ID guide for your area, whether it's British Columbia, Yukon Territory, or of course here in Ontario. Peterson's is a good option, so is Lone Pine, Newcomb's, and study them intently. But beyond that, you can look into actually learning how to work with the wild foods that you're dealing with. This is a great book that my friend Renee brought. She picked this up at Chapters, which is a Canadian bookstore, Stalking the Wild Asparagus by Ewell Gibbons. You do have to get an order in on it. You can't just pick it up in the store usually. And this is a fantastic read. It really is. Another one is Guide to Wild Foods and Useful Plants by Christopher Nargis. It is probably one of my favorites. It goes through a lot of stuff regarding everything from rosemary, which is not really a native species, but does everything from native plants to non-native plants and really covers the really important ones. These two right here are my books that I consider my absolute favorites when it comes down to wild food in general. The first one is Native Harvests by E. Barry Cavash. The full name is Native Harvests, American Indian Wild Foods and Recipes. And this is by far my favorite book I've ever used. It comes in from details from different nations. It explains certain plants. It explains how to process them, what parts to use, such as dandelion, everything. It's a fantastic read. This one is actually more of a local book. This was made by the Lovesick Lake Native Women's Association, and it's called The Rural and Native Heritage Cookbook, and this is volume 1. And it goes everywhere from how to cook beaver and groundhog and squirrel, all the way to how to cook fiddleheads. It also covers the nutritional value of certain plants and other foods out here in the wild. So don't just think about wild ID guides. Look into cookbooks, look into traditional heritage books, everything like that. You can find a great deal of information out there. Build your library up. There's nothing wrong with having a big bookshelf covered in books.